Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another episode of Learn to Play Games. My name is Lance, and today we're going to take a look at The Godfather: A New Dawn. This is IDW's newest game. It is a 3 to 6 player game that takes roughly 45 minutes to an hour to play. It is fully competitive, so there will only be one player that will win at the end of the game. The game itself is broken into a number of different rounds that each round will have 5 different phases in it. The players will roll dice, and then one player will be the Godfather each round. The other players will offer the Godfather a favor, and the Godfather will have to make the decisions to accept that or not. Once that is done, then the players will use their dice sets to take control of different neighborhoods in districts, trying to get the most neighborhoods in individual districts. At the end of the game, each player will total up the number of neighborhoods that they control in a district, and depending upon who has the most will get points for that district for first, second, and third place. After that, the player that has the most will win the game. So my impressions on this game is that I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It's a fast game. Like I said, it only takes roughly 45 minutes to an hour to play, so it does move along pretty quickly. There's a good amount of backstabbing where you can muscle other players out of neighborhoods that you may want to control, and there's a lot of strategy to it that I really enjoyed. So the only kind of downsides that I've seen to the game so far from when I've play tested it with my play group and a couple of other groups, people were having a little bit of a hard time distinguishing different districts because there'll be a district for each side of a dice, so districts 1 through 6. So that was the only thing, but it wasn't a big deal. Overall, nobody really got super confused with it, so that was the only kind of downside that I saw. Other than that, like I said, I really enjoyed the game. The flow of the game was very well. I love dice chucking games anyway, so it kind of fit right in with my style of game to begin with. So let's head to the table, and I'll teach you how to play. For player setup, each player will choose a color to represent them. They will get their 5-player dice, their 15 meeples, and their player screen that matches their color that they chose. Let's take a closer look at the board and some of the features now. So based on the number of players that are playing the game will be the side of the board that you use. So this is the 3 to 4 player side, and on the back side is the 5 to 6 player side. And the only difference on the board is each district on the 5 to 6 player side will have more spaces. Alright, so going down the river, you will notice that there are 6 different spaces on there, one for each side of a dice. These are considered the favors, and each one of these has a special condition that is listed on it. For example, 5 will duplicate a dice result, and we will take a closer look at that later in the game. Other than that, there are 6 different districts, one for each one of the sides of a dice. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Each district will be made up of a number of different areas with dice values in them, and each district will also have a circle that will denote the number of victory points that district is worth for the first, second, and third place at the end of the game. And each district will be determined by the number of areas that a player controls, which we will also take a closer look at later. So other than that, moving down the board, we have the section for Vegas, and this will have areas where the soldiers can be placed. Only one soldier can be placed in each number, and then at the beginning of the turn, the Godfather will roll the Vegas dice, and the players that have soldiers in those spaces will claim the number that the Godfather rolls. And then lastly, we have the muscle track, which will denote when, based on where the players are placed on there, if they're able to muscle players out of spaces in the districts, which we'll take a closer look at during that phase. There's a couple more steps that we need to follow before we're ready to start the game. So the last thing we need to do for the players is to have each player set out their screen, and then they'll place their dice behind it and their meeples to the side of their screen. From there, each player can go ahead and grab one of their meeples and place it in the 0 zone. And then we need to determine who the first Godfather is. So then each player will go ahead and roll their dice, and the player with the highest value will be the starting player. So the other players that did not roll high enough to be the Godfather will get to place one of their meeples into this number 6 slot of the favor track. And then each player will get their dice back, so that each player starts the game with 5 dice. From here, we're ready to start the game. Godfather: A New Dawn is played over a number of rounds, which each round consisting of 5 phases: Vegas, Roll, Offer, Resolution, and Cleanup. We're going to take a closer look at each one of these phases in order. The first phase in each round is the Vegas phase. During the Vegas phase, the Godfather player will roll 3 Vegas dice, and depending upon the numbers that he rolls, if there are soldiers in those spaces that match those numbers, those players will receive those dice as extra dice. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. We're going to go ahead and say that the blue player has guys in 6 and 5, purple has a guy in 4, and orange has a guy in 2. So the first thing we would do is roll our dice, and the dice that match the soldiers that are in those spaces will get those dice. So the purple player has picked up 2 of the Vegas dice that will be added to his area. Now with Vegas dice, he can choose to lock those numbers and keep them at 4s, or he can choose to roll the Vegas dice with the rest of his dice when it comes time to roll. Either way, he wants to keep them behind his screen so that the Godfather does not know that he has either locked those dice or rolled them, and we will see why in a little bit. On top of that, each player that gets dice from Vegas will return their player soldier from that number to their pool. And any dice that aren't captured will be moved back to the side of the Vegas spot, and all the soldiers that did not get dice will stay in their positions. The one other thing to note is the first round in the game will not have a Vegas phase, as there won't be any soldiers in there, so there will be no point to roll those dice. The second phase in a round is the roll phase. During this phase, all players are going to roll their dice simultaneously behind their screens to become their dice pool. So we'll go ahead and do that, including the Godfather. Once that's done, all players are going to simultaneously reveal 1 dice from their dice pool and put it in front of their screen for the Godfather to see. This revealed dice is called a favor. So all the players are going to do this except for the Godfather. So our players have made their selections and they reveal their dice. So blue has selected a 2 and purple has selected a 5. The third phase in a round is the offer phase, starting with the players to the Godfather's left and proceeding clockwise until each player's offer has been considered. The Godfather chooses one of 2 options for each player. The first option the Godfather can choose is to take the favor. The Godfather can choose to take a dice the player revealed as their favor. If he does, the Godfather will move that dice in front of his screen. The player who revealed the dice then places a soldier on that number on the favor track. The other option the Godfather has is to make a player an offer they can't refuse. If the Godfather doesn't want a favor dice, the player revealed, and the Godfather can request a dice with any number he wants from the player. If the player has the dice with the requested number, then he must give a dice to the Godfather of that number. That player then places 1 soldier token on one of 2 spots in the favor track. He can either choose to take the spot that he offered the dice with originally, or he can choose to place his soldier on the favor of the number that the Godfather requested. If the player does not have the dice that the Godfather requested, then he must reveal the dice he has to prove it. In this point, the Godfather will not receive a dice, but the player can still place a soldier on the favor track based on the number that he offered. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So the Godfather is the orange player, and so the blue player is the first player that he's going to consider. With the blue player, he is going to make an offer that player can't refuse. And he's going to go ahead and request that player give him a 3. The player does have a 3, so he's going to go ahead and give him that dice. And then he's going to go ahead and choose to place a soldier on the 3, as the 3 is a better one than the 2 for his options. Now, once that is done, then the blue player can choose to re-roll any of the dice that he has that he wants. This is a free re-roll and does not require the player to play a favor. So he's going to go ahead and choose to re-roll some of his dice. And then we'll go to the next player. So with purple, the Godfather is going to go ahead and accept that favor from the purple player. And the purple can go ahead and place a soldier on the 5 as a favor. Purple is satisfied with the dice that he has, so he's going to not choose to reroll any of his dice. And then the phase is done. The fourth phase in a round is the resolution phase, and this is going to be the longest phase in the round. So starting with the Godfather and proceeding clockwise, each player is going to reveal their dice, and then they're going to take their turn to resolve all of their dice and use favors. The one exception to this is that the Godfather cannot use favors. Players are going to use their dice plus any dice that they've collected from Vegas or other players to compose various sets, and take control of neighborhoods that will match those sets. Once they spend a set, they're going to move that set back behind their screen to signify that they've spent it. So let's go ahead and take a look at this real quick. So the Godfather is going to reveal his dice first. And then he's going to spend those dice to do various things. So the first thing we're going to look at is to purchase a neighborhood. So he's got a pair of 3 threes, and there's various locations on the board that have a pair of 3 threes. So let's go ahead and buy Fort Green. So he's going to spend his 3 dice, and then he's going to take one of his soldiers and place it on that location, now that he's purchased it. He's going to go ahead and spend a second set, which is a straight, so he's got a 4, 5, and 6, and he's going to go ahead and buy the straights on the 6. So he'll move those dice back behind his screen to signify that he's spent them, and then he's going to go ahead and place one of his meeples on there. The last dice he cannot use because it's only 1, and there's no locations on the board that are only 1. So once he's done, then it moves to the next player. Now there's a couple other things that the players can do during their turn besides just spending dice to claim areas. Another option players have is to recruit muscle. In order to recruit muscle, a player is going to move their soldier token forward on the muscle track a number of spaces equal to the sum of the dice that they wish to spend. If a player is on a letter space, they're going to count those spaces as a 0, and they will start on the 1 space. After movement, they're going to move their dice behind the screen as normal to signify that they've spent them, and only 1 soldier can be on each space. So if a player's soldier is going to end on another player's soldier, then they will simply move 1 space past that soldier to the next open space. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So the blue player is going to go ahead and take his turn. So he reveals the dice that he has. The first thing he's going to do is spend 3 dice to take the sequence on 4 for the straight. And so he's going to place his meeple up there. And then he's going to go ahead and spend a dice to move onto the muscle track. So, as we said, the A through D is counted as 0, so he'll move his meeple onto the number 2 space. He has no other dice, so his turn will be over and we'll move to the next player. To muscle another player, the player spends a set of dice, placing them behind their screen as normal to indicate that they've been used. The player then places the soldier token being muscled out of the neighborhood onto the favored track. It is placed on the ability matching the number of the district that it is from. A player with a token in the 0 zone cannot muscle any opponents out and can be muscled out by any opponent who is on a letter or a numbered space. While letter spaces can count as 0 for the purposes of counting, they are considered higher on the value than the 0 zones, and a player on a lettered space that is higher than another player can muscle that player out as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example of this. So we're going to go ahead and reveal the purple player's dice, and for the sake of this example, we're going to go ahead and say that the orange player has control over both of the 333 zones. So the first thing that the purple player needs to do is move up on the muscle track. So she's going to spend her 1 dice of a 4 to move up on the muscle track 4 spaces. From there, then she's going to go ahead and spend her 3 dice to muscle out the orange player as he is in the 0 zone and she is higher than he is. So she'll spend those 3 dice and we're going to go ahead and move him out of one of these zones back up to the favor track of 3, and then the purple player can move her meeple into that zone. The last option players have is to make a bet in Vegas. For each dice they spend to make a bet, a player places one of their soldier tokens on any empty spot on the Vegas track. All spent dice go behind the player's screen as normal, and if there are no empty spots in Vegas, then a player cannot place any soldiers in Vegas. The number on the dice rolled does not have to be the number of the soldier token is placed in Vegas. So let's take a look at an example of this. We'll say that the purple player has 1 dice left, and she wishes to make a bet in Vegas. So she's going to spend her 1 dice, and then she can place one of her soldier tokens anywhere in Vegas, not just the 4 slots that her dice result was. So we'll go ahead and place it in the 5 slots. Now, a couple things with Vegas is that only 1 soldier can be in each slot, and a player can play multiple bets in Vegas as long as there's open slots. Now, the one other thing to note about the Godfather is that the Godfather can only claim neighborhoods and muscle opponents out of neighborhoods on his turn. He cannot spend any of his dice to make bets in Vegas, and he cannot spend any dice to move his soldier up on the muscle track. Now let's take a closer look at the favored track. So using favors, all players except for the Godfather can use favors from the favored track at any time during their turn, before, during, or after dice resolution. To use a favor, the player removes one of the soldiers for the favor that they want to use. And they can do this as many times as they want as long as they have soldiers to remove from that favor. When they do, they remove that soldier and add them back to their pile. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example of this. We'll go ahead and say that it's blue player's turn again, and that he happened to roll pretty much the same dice that he had last time. He notices that he does have a blue soldier on the number 3 favor, which will allow him to move to an empty adjacent neighborhood. So we're going to go ahead and use a favor from that, and that will allow him to move one of his meeples, or one of his soldiers that he has, to an adjacent empty neighborhood. So let's go ahead and move him here, and then we'll go ahead and spend these 3 dice to reclaim that straight. Now he can choose to use another favor if he wants, because he does have another guy there, or he can choose to save those favors for a later turn. The last phase in a round is the cleanup phase. One thing to note is that all players that have meeples in the 0 zone will stay there. From here, then we're going to slide all the soldiers in the muscle track over to the left, keeping the same order. So blue will slide over to the A slot and purple will slide over to B. At this point, the player with the highest soldier on the muscle track becomes the new Godfather for the next round. And we're going to place his soldier on the number 3 spot that is highlighted for the Godfather. After this, then you're going to ensure that all players have their 5 dice, so the Godfather can go ahead and give those players back the dice that he used during his round. And then the last thing is to check the endgame conditions, which we're going to take a look at next. So there are 2 different ways that Godfather and New Dawn can end. The first is if all the neighborhoods are claimed in one of the districts, and the second is if a player runs out of all their soldiers on the side of their card or in their house as it's stated in the book. If either one of these conditions are met, then at the end of the round, the game will be over and we'll move into the scoring phase. Now it's time to take a look at scoring. So points are earned in 2 different ways. The first is to score each district individually. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first district we have up here. So this is the sixes, and first we're going to go ahead and count up the number of neighborhoods each player controls. So orange has 4 neighborhoods, blue has 3, and purple has 1. So orange has the most points, so he will receive 9 points, and you can go ahead and use the player's dice to mark these points. Blue had 3 neighborhoods, so he will get 6 points, as he has the second most control in that area, and purple will receive 3 points, as she had the least. Moving on to the next district, we have the fives. So in this district, purple has 3 areas, orange has 2, and blue has 2. So the first thing, purple has the most, so she'll receive 8 points. So she'll have 6 there and another 5. From here we have a tie. So if there is a tie, then all tied players will score points awarded to the next lowest place, and all subsequent scores will be awarded 1 rank lower as well. So since the players tied for second place, then they will be awarded the next rank lower, so that would be third place, and so they will both receive 3 points. So blue would receive 3, and orange would receive 3. And this is how it would work. So we would do this for all the different districts, going all the way down. And then the second thing that players will get is you will count up the number of soldiers in each player's house, not including any soldiers that are out on the field in Vegas or on the favored tracks. So blue has 2, 4, 6, 8. Purple has 2, 4, 6, 7. And orange has 2, 4, 6, 7 as well. So blue has the most, and so he will receive 3 points for that. Purple and orange are tied, so again, just like when we were scoring a district, they would get 1 space lower, so each one of them would receive 1 more point. And then if there was another player, then they would receive nothing. Once this is done, then you would total them up, and the player with the most points would be the winner. So orange has 13, and so he would be declared the winner of this game. So I hope that gave you guys a good idea of how the game runs and functions. As always, if you guys have any comments, questions, or anything else, leave them below. And until next time, I'll see you guys at the table.